start the recording. And good evening, my friends, and welcome once again to January of 2021. Finally, it's book club night again. Yay! It is. It's funny. All day long, we're like, book club night is one of our favorite Tuesdays of the month. I think not only because it's always a great conversation, but it feels easy, and I was just noticing tonight is our 38th episode of Sanctuary Online. And so we're just really glad to welcome you here and anyone who is unable to be with us tonight and those who are watching on the recording. So tonight I will pop up here and share my screen with you and let you know how we do things here at Sanctuary Online. And just like every night, we love it if you have your video on and also in gallery view. And all that means, my friends, is that when I pop out like this to the slide, you can go to the little people line, hit the Rubik's Cube, and you can pull out and see all the faces again. Also, if when someone's talking, they're the only one that you see, then that you know that you're in something called speaker mode versus gallery mode. And you can click on the top right of your computer, switch that over, and then you can see everybody. So nice to see everybody's faces, as one of the primary reasons we do this at Sanctuary is to create community and to connect. And God knows, as the world goes into shutdown, after one more phase of shutdown, we need to be reaching out to each other, right? So encouraging you to do that. And we'll be here for you every Tuesday night. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, hit the chat box. You can put your first and last name in there. I think we have everyone's emails tonight, where you're calling in from. And as always, thank you, Barb. I got my text feature this afternoon, just reminding me that it's indeed Tuesday and to show up. So I love that. If you don't get a text from us yet on Tuesdays, all you have to do is put your cell phone number in the chat box and Barb will grab that. And next Tuesday afternoon, she'll send you a nice little reminder. So as I said, tonight is one more night of book club. And we're going to be talking about the paying guests, which was suggested by Kristen, gosh, a few months ago, and we voted on that. So exciting about that. Later tonight, we'll unveil the book for next month as well. Speaking of next month, I have two slides here. February, we are incredibly excited. We've got Ken's teachings during our Advent piece on the great religions was just so well received that we decided to rack him up again. And he's going to be a part 1 and part 2, how the world's great religions began and what they actually believe. So 2 really powerful nights back to back to start our February. And then Can't Wait to Get to Heaven by Fanny Flagg. That will be indeed our February book. And then we'll chat. We've got some ideas already for March. So y'all are very efficient, a very efficient little tribe working ahead like this. In March, though, we're really excited to offer a special series, again, like our Advent series, but we're going to be taking excerpts from Creating a Life That Matters, which we call CLM, and the second course, which is Rediscovering Relationship with Myself. It's a really neat thing to do during the time of Lent, and it'll be a pretty introspective time, but also quite fun. The first course on the second is called Brilliant, Gorgeous, Fabulous, and it's about our multidimensional selves, how our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, our energetic bodies, and how they are aligned, and when they're not aligned, what happens to us. The ninth will be Powerful Beyond Measure, some work with the 4 yogas. The next night will be something called Under the Waterline, which we always teach before a course called Keeping Body and Soul Together, which is really one of the most profound courses within the curriculum around the intersection of our sexuality and spirituality. Really fun evening, great conversation. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
Welcome, hon. And then, of course, we'll have a March book. We might be doing a book from Self. We might be doing a book that you all pick next month. So that is the entirety of the slides for right now. So what I'd love to do is, Cheryl, hand this back to you, and you can begin to host what I expect to be an amazing conversation from our friends. So
it'll be fun. Yeah. You read the book, Cynthia?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, just about everybody read it. We only got a couple of slackers here.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna mute myself. Otherwise, I'll start making comments. Okay.
Oh, well, I'm thinking, Kristen, do you want to, since you brought this book along, do you want to make any opening comments here?
Well,
It's a big book.
it was a big book. I think when I recommended it, I'd started reading it with another book club, and I said to you all I hadn't finished it. In reality, I had not gotten very far at all my first time round. And so I was interested to see what kind of relationship these homeowners built with their tenants. And yeah, that turned out to be quite the relationship. But I love historical fiction, and from that aspect, I really did love this book. And the whole time I read it, whether it was their romance no, I can wait. There's no spoilers, right? Because everybody read it, or the murder. I was intrigued with like how the time that the story was set in had so much impact on the perception of everything that was going on. Like I kept thinking, if that happened today, how they, you wouldn't get away with certain things, or people would leap to different assumptions that just weren't even considered back then. So that was, for me, yeah, I love that it was historical fiction. It certainly was a little spicy, and it was very suspenseful.
Yes.
Nice.
Who was the person who said at the very beginning, it'll be great for all you guys who do Airbnb? And I'm thinking, 1922. Is it not written in 1922? Yes. Like when you think about it in 1922, in a sense, how advanced the characters were, and how the fight for that conservative English, old post-war, I mean, it must have been awful to live under that kind of oppression. Sometimes that hasn't changed, but in some ways, but I kept thinking, this is 1922. Holy smokes.
100 years ago.
I think the mom, I think she knew.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. I think she knew about her and Christina, right?
Yeah.
Her first special friend.
So she's just.
Oh, yeah. She knew about Christina for sure. Right. But there's that is one of the pages that I turned down on 556, where her mother says, "What a fight you've always had about everything, Frances. And all I ever wanted for you were ordinary things, a husband, a home, a family, such ordinary things." And, she'd been saddled with all this worry about the house, and, the dad hadn't left them very much money, etc. And she said, it isn't really a house for guests after all. Like, but, she made a life. Frances made a life. She didn't know who she was getting when they first, arrived, so to speak. But all of her latent stuff starts to emerge, which I thought was brave in lots of ways.
Well, let me ask you a question. When did you guys start suspecting that there might be this relationship? I mean, what?
Oh, I wrote the page down.
Did you, Jana?
For me, Cheryl, it was really early on, because the text that talked about how she was looking at the other woman was way too detailed for a straight relationship.
Yeah. And like, what, can you remember anything that she said, Linda?
No, I can't right now. No, I can't, but I do remember that it was very sensual.
Yeah. Even her description, I remember a description of just her forearms, or her,
Yeah.
And it was like, really, I was kind of surprised about that, but I didn't suspect it quite that soon. I don't know.
I did.
I actually started to think about it when she went to go visit Christina. There was something about her sitting at Christina's feet. I think it was like a description of the boots or something. And I was like, wait a minute. Whoa, oh, they weren't just friends, were they? And I was like, oh, wait. And then she's with the other woman now. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing too, Jana, did you find it?
I can't find it, but I know I dropped the page down because I thought, oh, okay, here we go. This will be interesting. And it was just the way she had looked at Lillian, or was questioning what her and Leonard's relationship really was like. And then it was like an envy in terms of wanting to be, I got to find it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just was that little innuendo. And I thought, okay, she's had other relationships. She's watching.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to ask one question first, but then I want to jump into something else. A lot of books you read, you pick them up and you're like, bada bing, bada boom, you can't even put it down, right? Was this one of those books?
No,
No,
And for me.
no.
not for me either.
I think it was like waves. There were bits I got
Yeah.
to that I was like, oh, wait, what's happening now?
Yeah.
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 And then I could be like, all right, now it's dragging. And then like something else would happen.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
for me, the part that made it hard to engage with the book ended up being the part that I really enjoyed about the book. And it goes to Kristen's point about the historical fiction, because Sarah Waters' writing is so detailed. The early British references kind of left me in the dust, because the thing with whatever the geyser for the bathtub and I was like, okay, I'm just getting out of context what some of these things are, because I don't know what they are. But she really throws herself back into the fabrics of the time, the styles of the time, the haircuts of the time, the air of the time, what it was like to live with all these World War I veterans, which, if you think about it, in Europe, that many veterans at one time was probably a very unique experience for them. So Sarah Waters, through her detail, really did made me feel like what it must have been like to live in that area at that time.
Yeah.
And so there were words I didn't know, but I didn't stop to look them up. But there was one, Spoonie. I had to look up Spoonie.
Spoonie?
Really? Okay.
Spoonie, Spoony.
Oh.
It was when Frances and Lillian were at the gazebo at the park, and some boys look at them and they go, Spoonie. And I'm like, what does that mean? So the boys were teasing them that they were romancing. Is what was going on.
I got that impression. I didn't look up the word, but I figured that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Kelly.
I found it. It was page 59.
Page 59. Wow, that's really early in the book.
Yeah, and where she said that she was very suspicious of Mr. Barber from Leonard from the beginning, and then that sort of loneliness had come over her in terms of watching them, listening to them go up the stairs and be almost envious. And then she actually listened to his step on the stairs with crossness, but found herself curious as to how he would greet his wife. And she thought of Christina asking her if she'd put a tumbler to the wall, but it wasn't eavesdropping, was it? It was one simply stole closer to the door, tilted their head, and like, how you get that straining to hear what's really going on? That was the first time. I put it down with a big question mark on page 59.
You're quick, Jane.
Oh, wow, that's early. Kelly, we're asking when did people know that there was, when did they suspect a relationship was what we were talking about. But yeah. Did you finish the book, Kelly? Huh?
Yes, I finished it. I loved it.
Good.
It was really interesting. And I really don't know when I suspected. It was pretty early on, because I suspected her when she first was meeting her. I don't remember their names. I'm terrible at that. But
Leonard and
I
Lillian.
suspected that she was attracted to the guest.
Yeah, Lillian. Yeah.
So
Frances.
Lillian's the guest.
Yeah, Lillian.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, there was one part, when Frances kind of came out to Lillian, so to speak. Lillian was cutting her hair, remember?
Mhm.
And she came out to her, and all of a sudden, Lillian went dark. She just shut down.
Mhm.
And so, what did you guys think at that point? What was going on in your head, or what did you think about what Lillian was doing?
I thought she was scared,
Yeah.
totally scared.
Like freaking out.
But I also thought that Lillian thought that Frances was onto her in terms of how they really were living, and that there was something not right. And she was afraid to really be vulnerable at that point. But even just taking the pins out of her hair and stuff, just the way she did that, she was starting to open up in some way, but yeah, scared. She was afraid. But
So
she knew
she
she was
shut
onto
down.
her.
Yeah.
Well, Jane, who was on the who?
That Lillian was afraid, thought that Frances was onto her. She had a sense that Frances knew what wasn't going on between her and Leonard.
Mhm.
So it was the first time that she sort of was a little bit on the vulnerable side, although she'd never told her story or anything at that point.
So did anybody think, see, I thought, that it shut her down, and she thought, wow, I had some of those feelings, but maybe I never knew what to do with it. Never thought of it as a possibility, just was kind of just blown away, kind of shut down, didn't know what to do with it.
Well, it does do something. So at that time, even now, two women can be kind of affectionate or messing around or doing each other's hair, but the dynamic changes, and it's innocent, but the dynamic changes. I think it's innocent because it's presumed to be asexual, but the dynamic changes when when Frances said, well, I've kissed a woman like that, or however she phrased it, I can't remember. One, Lillian probably just has never dealt with that in her head, so she didn't know how to deal with that. That was just like, that would have been for Lillian in that era, like somebody from, Borneo just jumped in front of her or something,
Yeah.
But it also might have been that she had wondered about that because she was in a marriage that lacked affection. And so maybe it kind of clicked in her, is there a different kind of relationship to have? I think it was probably just like a stunning a fish. It was just kind of like, that's an interesting piece of information. I'm not quite what to do with it, so I'm just going to kind of shut down right now.
Yeah.
So I saw it more that way, Edie, like you just said, like that she was probably up until that point enjoying like a safe flirtation with a girlfriend, and that like I imagine that in that moment she was going back through her mind of like everything she'd said and everything she'd done and putting like a new filter on it, like, oh wait.
Yeah.
And if you see that new filter, but I also, in her lacking so much in her relationship with her husband, and her clearly being I took her to be a very needy person.
Mhm.
I finished the entire book and I'm not 100% convinced that Lillian is really in love with Frances that way.
I
Like
agree.
I'm 100% convinced that Frances knew who she was, knew that it was different for the time, knew that she was willing to try to find a way to make herself happy in her own sexuality. And I'm still not convinced that Lillian wasn't just finding comfort in it, even by the end of the book.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Well, I felt that way through the second half of the entire book because Lillian was so incredibly needy
Mhm.
and she didn't really do anything to take care of herself. She always had Francis there to take care of her. And just to be totally candid with the group, I was in a relationship like that for a while, and I know what that feels like. So I could recognize the dependency and the it's an invisible kind of abuse almost. It's like, well, you'll take care of me, won't you? Constantly.
Mhm.
And that's how I felt as well. Although at the end, I guess I really kind of, Lillian talked me into the fact that she was okay by the end of the story.
I think like the last couple pages when she shows up for Francis, because I didn't expect that. It was like
Yeah.
when Francis walked out of the courtroom and realized Lillian wasn't by her side, I was like, oh yeah, I'm validated. I kind of had a feeling exactly what you just said, and not in like a vindictive, mean using way, more in a naive,
Yep.
tripping into something new and unexpected and loving it and enjoying it and being like innocent and naive and honest about it, but still that if something else came along, I just wasn't sure that Lillian would commit to it.
Yeah.
Would take the
Yeah.
risks, would take the risks that would be necessary in their lives to like be true to it.
And
So-
at the end, did you think that she might, Kristen? Because I that's part of my thing is at the end, I'm thinking, I wonder what happened to them after that
I
because,
know, right?
Yeah.
you know,
Because they still have like, you know, everything with her family. Like she
Yeah.
goes after Francis in the last couple pages. She goes and she seems to proclaim herself, but you're still like, okay, is she going to say something to her mother? Is she going to say something to her family? Is she going to well, I mean, yeah, right? And that's
That's
and then
why
they also have this huge weight to carry with them for the rest of their lives. So their
Right.
sexuality in the 1920s aside, to form any kind of relationship, they have to live with the fact that they got away with murder.
right.
So that was like
Well, and
another like,
that's part of what I wonder is if they get together, will somehow somebody start suspecting something? You know?
The other thing I thought of was I think some of her behavior, especially in the early part of the book, showed that she really was afraid of her husband. I really think she was. I think she was, as we've all expressed, I think she was a little maybe codependent, expecting, to be taken care of. And he was definitely not a caregiver. He was a user, not a, helper. And I think for me, I thought that she was a little bit intimidated by him. And I think I agree with what was said earlier about how the historical drama and the time frame of that, I mean, that's 100 years ago, how different it was and how people would react differently when confronted with a situation like that. They probably had very little exposure, if any, to that lifestyle or that particular whole venue. And
So Lillian was raised to be needy.
yes,
She was raised to assume she needed a man to take care of her. She was raised with all these sisters and mom around her taking care of her. That's all she knew was to be needy.
Yeah.
All Frances knew was to be independent because she knew she was different from the get-go. So she's like, well, if I can be a wealthy daughter in a family, great. If I have to be the char, if I have to be on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor, I just do what needs to be doing. So she's independent. So metaphorically, when they kill Len, they sort of metaphorically kill the social norm of a wife beholden to a husband who brings home a paycheck, and also in that era, people of a certain class, had mistresses or had their night with the boys. And so she she was kind of raised to be needy, and Frances had this independence that Lillian probably just was amazed by.
Yeah.
I have a question because y'all keep saying they killed him. And my take on it was that he was attacking her and Lillian defended her, by hitting him with whatever, the frying pan or something, because otherwise, who knows? He might have killed what is the other one's name?
Yeah.
Francis.
I think there's an argument for self-defense. I think as soon as they decided to hide the body,
Yeah.
right, it's gonna be front, right? And so that's the thing.
Yeah, that
Like
was
the whole thing in
over.
the story, you're like, oh my gosh. And then like for a little while, they do look into, well, was she stepping out and cheating on him? And then the whole thing that he was cheating after all. And never once does anyone suspect anything with her relationship with Francis, because I guess it just would have been so inconceivable,
Mhm.
Right.
that no matter how many times Francis shows up, the landlady is, by her side nonstop.
Yeah.
One of the things in the book that I really threw me a curve, and I wasn't really impressed by it being added to the storyline, was this life insurance thing.
Yeah.
I thought, why did she do that? Why did she throw that in the book?
Why do you guys think?
I think it was because that's just a normal thing for the police to assume. And so, at least today it is. I mean, that's one of the motives that they would automatically look into if it exists. And
Sorry,
so,
Janice, that's not what I meant. What I meant was the author even writing that into the storyline.
yeah, that's what
But there even was a life insurance policy.
Right, but so don't forget,
Because
he
it was
worked in
done,
insurance.
it was done later on, and they weren't having a good time together. So why does he put an insurance policy on a wife that he has no use for?
Guilt.
But I think that was right. That was the argument.
I
they
think
tried
that
to
came
make.
out, the guilt later on.
Yeah.
I think that there was a very small inkling of that.
Okay.
They even discussed it because I think they actually had that same question. Why did he take out a life insurance on me? Lillian says, but I think it was the guilt over the girlfriend.
Yeah. And when that happened to him, where he got beat up, he was concerned about what would happen.
Right.
But the reason I thought maybe the author threw it in there is it creates a little more turmoil even for Frances, wondering, hey, did she do this on purpose just to get the life insurance? This wasn't about me, and now she's dragged me into all this,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
to me, what I said about, the whole last third of the book, almost, and it's almost half of the book, is about after they killed him, right? And
Right.
it's like, it was like mental psychological torture through the whole thing for him. I just was like, oh my God, crazy making stuff,
Well, and maybe that's it, like, because there was a good section there where, partially triggered by the life insurance, by realizing that the note that Lillian said to Francis that meant so much to Francis, when Francis realizes that Lillian wrote that right after she found out she was pregnant and would, therefore be trapped. Like when Francis has all her doubts with Lillian, I think for me, that was where I was like, oh, I got into like Francis's dark place. And it was like Francis came out of it and I never really did. I was like, oh, Francis, stick to your doubts. I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm single. But yeah.
Well, there was two interesting pieces before any of all this started to me. And one was the little threesome party that they had. And then the other one was when the two of them were talking and sharing intimately about their past lives, Lillian and Frances. And, she talks about being called a vampire and she pulls the stake out of her heart, So did either one of those, anybody have anything to say about either one of those? Did either one of those hit you?
Yeah, that snakes and ladders, drunken little pushing a little further, pushing a little further, and pretty soon you're like, wait, how come all of the things on the game have to do with Lillian making a sacrifice? You know, it's just another one of those metaphors where the guys get to call the shots, you know.
Yeah.
And um, and I felt like the gals there were pretty brave in saying, you know, done, boom, gone. Okay, might be a little drunk, but we've crossed the line, or we're about to. And so I found that whole scene again sort of metaphorical, but also very curious.
See, I read that as possibly him testing the two women to see
Yes.
how far Francis would let him go in the abuse.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And then I also, if we can go back 20 minutes in the conversation here, earlier we were talking about when Lillian was doing Francis's hair and Francis came out to her. That to me was also a test to see, would she run away if she knew? And she didn't run away.
It seemed like she did for a while, or Francis thought she did.
Right.
Came back pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw the same thing with the game. I think Len was testing, and it, you know, reminded me like early on when they first move in and he kind of corners
Francis.
Francine in the kitchen, or she feels cornered anyway. He does seem like a overbearing, abusive, you know, emotionally at least used to getting his own way. I think that like all fit with his character of like taking control and then just wanting to embarrass his. I think he just wanted to like embarrass his wife and prove that he could do that.
You know, there was I can't remember exactly the place, but I thought, you know, if he's setting her up to test her, definitely to test her, which gives him permission to do what he's doing. And and then it levels the playing field in a sense, because if like he would just prick at her every once in a while, and he would actually make sort of little digs at Francis as well, just to see what she was going to come out with, whether she would come out in defense of Lillian. It made Francis want Lillian more, but I just thought he was real slimy. I found him really irritating. And when he first got,
I would have hit him in the head.
when he
Well,
first
I
got
thought
mugged, I was
Francis
like,
was-
yeah, okay, someone's on to you.
I thought Frances was just as irritating. She really made me mad. She actually did things to Lillian, not just watched him, you know.
Well,
She
you know what
participated.
we couple of us said about Lillian being like really needy, but I think Frances like needed to take care of people.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
for sure.
part of her thing, and like from fighting with her dad to taking care of her mother, to taking care of the house, like I think there's almost like a tongue-in-cheek kind of pride to it, like, look at me, I'm going to take care of it. And then the thing with like when she was when they're walking and she says she like has a little like take the wall, like I think, you know, she really was like I think she really wanted to take care of Lillian, and the more she saw Len be abusive, I think the more she wanted to like step in, and I don't know, maybe that's even down to hiding a body, right?
Yeah. But I thought, Kelly, like you, when she was, you know, she was okay for all those things to be happening with Len to do those things to her, because she was so interested in finding out about Lillian. She wanted to see her body. But she was drunk, you know, and that was part of it, was she had lost her control over it. And that's why she seemed so guilty about it later, you know. But she was drunk, and of course when she was drunk, she was like, oh yeah, let's see this, you know. I mean,
Well, I think part of way I viewed it is colored because I'd been in an abusive relationship. So whenever I hear that kind of thing happening, I get really mad, you know. It makes me angry. So that she didn't take up for her, even though she liked her and all this, it just made me angry. You know, I feel like that's part of your responsibility in life is to watch out for each other, period, whether you want a relationship or not. But of course, you're saying like she was drunk and attracted, and there was a lot of sexual energy.
Well, and it was 1922. And, you know, and
See those ankles.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about power over, men had that power over. That was just the way it was. I mean, Jane Ann, you said something that made me think, do you think that Leonard had thought that there was possibly something going on between the two of them?
Yeah, because I turned down the pages a couple of places where it was like he was, it's not the word, I don't think the word's ornery, but he was kind of insinuating to Frances that there was more to her than meets the eye. Like he was pricking her a little bit to see if she would jump on him. And it happened a couple of times in the hallway, and it happened, and then I was just aware that Frances was starting to really obsess about every little minute that she could hear or not hear, or and so it was starting to overtake her. And so that must have been visible, because I'm just trying to think of where I saw it. I've turned down so many pages now I can't find the page. But so I thought he was on to her.
Yeah.
But he did drop a couple of hints, like he talked about with a lisp, he talked about his manicurist, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, he did drop a couple of these little hints. What seemed real powerful about this to me, about the way that Sarah Waters told the story, when Frances and Lillian did get together and they talked about all the stolen moments and how careful they had to be, and they had to listen for people on the stairwell. And they had to make sure that when they're in public, they didn't look at each other inappropriately. And you know what? When I went into the Air Force in 1984, I didn't know I was gay. Joe knew I was gay, but I didn't know I was gay. And
Yeah.
and but by the time I came out to myself in 1985, every relationship was like that. Even if I was in my own home with my, you know, girlfriend or partner at the time, you have to worry: is the window open? Is somebody looking? Is the phone tapped? This could end my career if somebody knows this. And it took a lot out of the relationship to constantly be on alert 100% of the time like that. So it was the Roaring 20s, and so there was some social exploration. But I was surprised, for example, that Christina and Stevie, you know, were able to make the life that they had and just be themselves. And I was also surprised, I didn't come out to my parents until I was 36 years old. So, you know, as secretive as things were, I was kind of mortified when Frances came out to Lillian during the hairstyling episode, because I was like, oh man, you can't take that shit back.
But she'd already had one experience, and I was struck by the contrast between Christina and Lillian. I mean, she wouldn't have been able to control Christina by just the same way she could have the influence and be the pursuer in the relationship with Lillian. And but she was very guarded like that too. She said, "Oh, my mother must have known. My mother must be imagining now that I have some sort of crush on Lillian, and she doesn't even realize. Maybe she's warning her. She couldn't guess how dizzyingly far beyond a crush they'd already become. And what would she think?" But I'm thinking, well, didn't she know when she had the relationship with Christina, or did she hide it better, or was this more?
She got
more
caught
obsessive.
She got caught with Christina.
Yeah, she got caught with her.
and was
Mhm.
supposed
She
to
did
give
get
up
caught with her. Yeah.
yeah, and was supposed, I think that's how her mother knew.
Mhm.
And I found it interesting, that Stevie clearly, was aware of the friendship that Francis and Christina had. And there's another level
Mhm.
there, right? Because Francis and Christina are not together because Francis didn't have the nerve to go through with it, is kind of the
Mhm.
implication, like to be out completely, even after getting caught, like, but to be out in society. And that's, you get her when she's imagining like, oh, that she and Lillian can have that little kind of room that Stevie and Christina had. But there is a point like when she doubts Lillian, she goes and has like kind of a romantic day with Christina.
Yes.
Like nothing like happens, but it is like a romantic day. And I think Christina even gets a little hurt by it.
Do we know much about the author? I didn't look her up, but what age group is she in, and I wonder her background.
Well, I knew that when I saw what she had written, Tipping the Velvet, of course, was a pretty relatively recent, and it was made into a movie work of hers, and I knew that it was lesbian themed. So when I saw that in the on the book cover deal, I thought, I mean, the problem is that kind of clues you in pretty early that somebody in the book is a lesbian.
Okay.
I think I probably knew pretty early on with Frances, but I think when Frances, when she left Christina, wasn't that when her father had just passed and the
Yes.
boys had been killed, and there were just all these complicating factors that made it,
Right.
it's not as simple as I chose not to come out with her. There was just a whole lot going on.
Yes.
Yeah, she felt like she had to then stay and take care of her mother, because like you
Yeah,
said, Kristen,
what I
she's
thought.
very much a caretaker, and she,
Yeah.
And sort of, she wanted to be, I think, Kristen, when you were talking about this, she wanted to be chivalric.
Yeah.
Chivalric.
That's the word. Yeah.
Sort of wanted to be a protector, defender, a more sort of masculine butch role, I guess.
It was almost like two giant books in one. And I do like to read the even like the little acknowledgments and author's notes, whatever, at the end. And that seemed to be like the stuff she drew from was really all murder trials from the historical times. And I was like, the story of their sexuality in 1922 is so big. And the story of like the class and the almost like an upstairs downstairs thing, and then taking in guests and all, like that's such a big thing. And then you're only like halfway in the book and you're like, oh crap, now it's a murder.
Yeah.
And you still have this entire murder story. And then I was just so focused on the fact that they never once looked at Francis and Lillian's relationship as anything questionable.
Poor Spencer, man.
It just didn't think of it.
it was just not a thing, people just didn't go there, you would never have thought such a thing,
And
especially
Frances projected it in her head. She would walk through all the scenarios in terms of what was going to happen, and if they went to the police, and should they confess everything. And I mean, she had really worked it through. But I, there's I think it's about in the middle. It's like page 256 or so, where they're having their intimate encounter, and Francis is questioning Lillian. Well, is it like this with him? And she very bluntly says, well, if I stopped doing what I do with him, he would immediately suspect something. He'd pestered me. He'd make scenes. He would get suspicious. He would make things harder for you and me. He already wonders why you want to see so much of me. So there's there was that tension was all the way through it, all that.
Sure was.
It just, and it was building and building to almost an obsessive piece of Frances, but I think not so much Lillian. I think she was so naive and she was so fragile. I kind of felt bad for her, but she irritated me at the same time. Like when all that murder stuff happened, she goes right back to her family. She's encased in them. She lets them run her life. It's as though Frances doesn't even exist. And then that's when she starts going like, now what am I going to do? Should I go and confess? Should I go and tell? Should I tell someone the whole thing?
But also that's what Frances did when her brothers and father died. And she just ran back to, you know, safety where you
comfort zone.
Yeah,
so I
like
think she
you do like what's expected of you almost.
Mhm.
But I really did. I felt a lot of the time too. I'm curious if you guys like that. Their hiding of the death, right? Whether it's defensive or accident or murder or whatever, that they hit it more out of concern of what would happen if their relationship was outed, right? Like, right, they kind of from the beginning felt like they could defend it as an accident, fighting him off. But it was always like, how would how would Lillian tell her mother why that happened? How would Frances explain what she was doing there? Like, and that's where I think like the whole 1922 times, like they were more worried that the neighbor lady who was friends with the mother would find out about the relationship than that they would actually have to defend hitting a jerk in the head.
Because do you think it's because people would wonder what they were doing up there at that time of night?
That's what I thought. But then their whole point is to run away together. So I'm like, well, are you gonna be together? That's why like I finished the book and I'm like, I'm not sure if they
either
have the I don't know, whatever it takes to do that.
Yeah, but even the option of doing it, because if they got together, I think it would raise not eyebrows necessarily, but raise suspicions about, well, wait a minute, was this what was going on all along? Kind of thing. So
But in
it could have been a whole nother
1922,
book.
maybe two women could live together comfortably in 1922 down the street from all the other people.
I mean, like they could be roommates, right? Be friends. Like I guess that's what Christina and Stevie are to the outside world.
Yeah.
Well, they talked about
what most women living together were until last decade.
Yeah, they talked
But
about
also in
going to
that,
Paris. Well, I don't know if Paris had a different aesthetic, in the 1920s, but they talked about running off to Paris.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah.
Post-war though, there was so much loss. So many men were missing and so many men had gone that it would make sense. It would almost be natural for the women to gravitate together, whether they were together or not.
Strictly economically, if nothing else.
Right. Yeah. You ran out of men.
Looks like it.
Well, and I think they were more openly affectionate to each other, like you see in those times, holding hands and linking arms and walking, like that together, just as friends,
Very detailed.
So
but I agree with Kristen that I just found that other place where, you were talking about the stake, and they go back to that stake because Lillian still can't say she's really with her. And she said, and so Frances just says, really, are you choosing him? And she said, you're not choosing him. And, but she never could 100% say. Now, maybe she knew she was pregnant then, I don't know, but she could never 100% say she was in it, even though she was in it.
I don't think of Lillian as all that, poor little thing, because, to me, maybe it's, passive aggressive stuff or something. I don't know what it is, but it's playing both sides of the thing. But, she had been pregnant 3 times, and twice she, got rid of the baby herself. So she took some control over her own self, over her own body, over her own life, to some degree, and pulled other people in to help her with it,
Yeah.
But and she used whatever rationale she wanted to use. So I'm not sure. I think of her as all that poor little thing,
Yeah.
That was a gross part. That section of the book where she was going through the miscarriage. Oh my God. Or the abortion, whatever you want to call it. That was amazing. Like, holy smokes.
I think the author captured something there. And I've told this to straight friends over the years many times. It's very hard to be a lesbian and be wimpy. You have got, it's too easy to marry and just hide it. I'm serious. And I'm sitting here thinking about all the times. I can remember being in an apartment of a friend in Detroit, and I said, "Where is Sue this weekend?" And her partner Sandy said, "Well, Sue went back to where she's from to get married." I went, "What?" "Oh yeah, she'll be back." And what? He said, "Well, her family wanted her to get married and it was easier, and he likes to hunt and fish and she wants kids." So the next year I visited them, there was a baby, and Sandy and Sue had agreed that Sue would have a baby. And then a couple of years later, there was another baby, and Sandy and Sue broke up. And I went, "Well, how did that?" "Well, we didn't really, Sandy didn't want a second baby." But anyway, but now Sue has left the husband and is with a woman, permanently. But this happened more than once with my friends. They'd float into these other things. And I just realized that the ones who hung around and hung in there, you just really can't be wimpy and be a lesbian. It's just, you can just, it's easy to be married and go and do what, and I thought the author did a good job of conveying that about Lillian. She was ready to take a change because she had controlled her life in these small ways. That's why I say I've got to read more on the author, because I was impressed with, and I was reading another book at the time, and it was not well written. It was about a lesbian coming out. And the only thing I'm holding on to from that other book is a woman asked a lawyer if she wants to sleep with her. And the lawyer said, "No, I won't sleep with you." And the woman said, "Why not?" And she said, "Well, remember, you never keep the first pancake." So
What?
I'm holding on to that joke. So, but I guess, and that book was, as I said, was written kind of silly, and it wasn't,
That cracks me up.
there was no depth to it. But this book, as I said, the author, I felt, did a wonderful job of bringing over and over these characteristics of, and I had an aunt who was born in 1900, and she was, my father's family was 6 boys and 1 girl. She graduated from high school at 16, put 4 brothers through the University of Michigan before she went to college at 24 years old, 1924, and zoomed through the University of Chicago Phi Beta Kappa.
Wow.
She always had lunch. My father said, "Aunt Elva was never discriminated against." So Darlene and I asked her, and she said, "Oh, yes." She said, "I got a wonderful job. And the papers, you have to take classes to get ahead. They always came back stamped, 'No women allowed.'" So she said, "I decided to go work in Washington for the government because you take tests to advance." So she kept our name, but when Mark Ward, so when I've even looked her up, and she was loaned out from the Census Department to other departments. She was such a good mathematician. But she met another woman every Saturday for brunch. Now, what went on, I can't tell you, but I know Margaret was very dear to her. And Aunt Elva was, of course, very kind to Darlene and myself. So I mean, I have some experience with someone who was obviously feeling those feelings in the 20s, but was very shrouded and, lived alone and did things in a certain style. So,
Well, so much of it is societal. So I have a friend who left a husband, Donnie, for a woman named Denise, and now she's left Denise, and she would prefer to be with a man just because socially it's easier. But she said, I would love to be married to Donnie, but have sex with Denise. And
that's right. There's that social thing there. My best friend got married and had 2 children from college, and then she later had a woman on a side for 20 years. I said, "How do you do that?" She said, "Well, I'm with her Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and I'm with my husband the rest of the nights." All this goes on. We have no idea. But it would, and I graduated from college in the 60s. So I guess what I'm saying is that I'm sure there's people who live that way now.
Yeah, you had a
in,
comment there,
in the
Barb, about
early
Boston marriages,
1980s.
right?
Husband and off.
Yeah.
Boston
uh,
marriages?
In the early 1980s, when I was had moved up to Rochester, New York, and was playing softball for Kodak. There was a woman that played on the softball team, and her across the street neighbor used to come to all of the games. And as we gradually, learned more about each other and the people on the team, they were a lesbian couple that had been together for decades. They lived across the street from each other. Each one lived with their husband and family. And I was never quite sure whether they were a lesbian couple who had husbands and families on the side, or whether they were,
Mothers.
straight nuclear families that found a little something something extra with each other.
That's a good point too, because I think another, just going back to the book and the actual fight that led to Len's death, the weird thing about it, like, you follow this train, they were cheating on each other, right? So, like,
Right.
who's Len to get mad at his wife for whether it was with a woman or not? Like, when he was having this whole affair,
Right.
and someone was talking about the conversation she had where she felt like she had to stay with him to keep him whatever, but like, off her case. But she reflects later on, like, during parts of the marriage, like, she is hurt by the idea that he was seeing someone else, even though she was, presumably in love and having a full-blown affair and talking about a future, but was still hurt. And so I think there is something real about that in these real life scenarios, that you have affection. And who just said it? I think Edie said it, like, I wouldn't mind being, like, married to the one as long as I could sleep with the other.
Right.
That fine line between, like, your affection and a relationship that's, like, platonic but maybe has respect, or it's financial, or it's good for making babies. And then, like, what else you have to really be fulfilled? You wonder, like, there's, like, different kinds of love there, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, we can keep going if you want to, and it is 9:00. So I want to, say that and be clear that our time is really up. I also want to make sure that everybody knows what the next book is. And if you want to start looking at the other books at this point for March, or do you want to wait until the next book? Because it's a little bit lighter book, and maybe we'll have more time to talk about it. Want to wait and do that in February?
Sure, let's wait.
Have any other ideas right now?
Well, the one for March that somebody had brought up was, I think Edie, you brought it up, was the Book of Longings, right, by Sue Monk Kidd, for March. But we can think about that, look at it, and see what you think. We know what we're going to do for February. We are doing the Can't Wait to Get to Heaven by Fannie Flagg, right? So, but why don't we,
Who's the author of the Book of Longings again?
Sue Monk Kidd.
Sue Monk Kidd.
Yeah. So you can look at that, and we can think about some other books and bring some other ones to the table for the February meeting if you want. Does that sound good?
Cheryl, I thought I heard earlier, Joby, you said there might be a March book that might come out of the CLM program.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of a back and forth on that, Glenda. Thanks for bringing that up. I was kind of a fan of staying in that CLM kind of energy through the 5th week. And it might be challenging because the books that are sourced for self, I don't want to go into an academic space in Lent, and yet most of them are on, God, Cheryl.
Well, first of all, they're nonfiction.
Yeah, it would, which might be a good break for you guys though, too. Right. If you go novel.
Joby, the only reason I asked the question is we don't want to preempt week 2 or 3 of the program because we're reading something that takes us further into the program than we're ready to be in yet.
Yeah, that's a good comment. And let me grab here
The book that we were thinking of is a book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart.
Yeah.
And it's a nonfiction book, but it's a lot about how things happen, how we observers of experiments, for instance, have an impact on the result of the experiment. You know, how we actually have a lot of impact on what goes on. It's about
It's quantum physics.
quantum physics, yeah. So, but it's stories. You know, she's a journalist, and so she tells kind of stories, or you know, she's fighting for it, you know, for the field or whatever, for all that. But she tells stories of why this, you know, why quantum physics works. You
Cheryl,
know,
can I do, just so, I don't know, there's a few people on here who don't know what CLM is. And for those of you who might remember back, the first session of Self is about the fact that we have an energetic body. And it's a pretty, it's our first step outside of back then what would be considered normal, because people think we have a spiritual body, but this is actually saying we have, as human beings, we have an energetic body that actually moves with us and bounces up and overlaps with other people's energetic bodies. And all that comes from the field, and it's all science. But like Cheryl's saying, the cool thing about her is she's not a scientist, she's not a quantum physicist, she's a storyteller. She brings the science together, but with story. And so it might be a really cool read for people. I need to figure out if people can get it, you know, because
it's still pretty academic. I mean, it's interesting to me. I like things like that. But,
it's academic. It's also, I mean, she basically, they talk about discovering the weight of the Holy Spirit scientifically. So you know, Glenda, we probably have to go into it, Cheryl and I, a little bit to see, would it still be enjoyable for you all?
Yep.
And
I just wanted to mention it because it had come out earlier.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. And we do use the prologue in Self from exactly that book. It's actually it sets up all of Self. So it might be a really cool book. But you know what, Cheryl or I probably have to thumb through it and see if it would be good for you guys, because it might be nice for you all to take a break from novel. But who am I? Just one.
Hey, I've been bucking for nonfiction, you know,
since you were born.
I'm jiggy with that.
Whoa.
Yeah,
well,
Think about it. Think about it
for
the put on the table for just thinking about. I don't know if it would be March or not, but you know, it might be fun to for this group to discuss Amanda Gorman's "The Hill We Climb."
Ooh.
Ooh.
That's not a novel, it's a poem.
It's a poem, but how cool
But
to
it is
really deconstruct it,
chock a
Barb.
block full of stuff.
Man, oh man, yeah. I was thinking also
enough for a whole. Do you think there'd be enough in it?
Did I hear she's publishing a book that's coming out soon too?
Or already has, or
is it out?
It's coming out February 5th.
Yeah, I think it's coming February 5th.
Either that or Snoopy's coming out February 5th. One of the two. I forget.
Did you see the poem she wrote the morning after?
Oh.
She wrote
There's already a book I'm seeing on Amazon right now. It says the hill we climb, an inaugural poem for the country.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Oh, it's amazing. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, and the way she read it
Her
was
hands. It was her hands. It was like
it was expressive.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that guy on America's Got Talent that spoke like that? The spoken word, he called it. Did you guys see him?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because and when she started talking like that, that was exactly who I thought of, because she spoke a lot like he did, you know?
Yeah.
Well, they said that's a whole new area of performance.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And Cynthia, he was the first spoken word person on in all of the years and seasons of America's Got Talent.
Okay.
It was the first time. And the thing is, the first one that he did, the first poem, just stopped like all the audience, which is all on Zoom, and all the judges, they couldn't even breathe. They're like, how could we be this like 60 years old and have never seen this art form, you know? But he went all the way through.
Same thing she did, you know, it was the same art form.
Beautiful.
Does anybody know what his name was so I can look it up?
Can't remember.
Oh my goodness, what was?
You know what? Look up 2020 America's Got Talent spoken word. And I'm
Okay.
sure,
Yeah,
because you know, it'll be up there. Glenda is probably a few of his, he did, I think, 4 nights.
and
Okay, good,
he
thanks.
was in the top 5, I think, or something.
He was in the
so-
top
Yeah, he
5.
was way up there.
We thought he might have
Okay.
won. Barb, you know, and just my friends, this might be a good idea for if you are planning on coming to Lent. I might put a bit of homework in, you know, just a touch. And Cheryl, so it might be nice to just do a poem that last week, because if we have them doing pre-readings and things like that, I'm not sure, my friends, because we're just not sure how to do CLM online, you know, if someone doesn't do their homework or doesn't do the pre-work. But I think I'm going to give it a taste. And so it might be a nice night to do Amanda Gorman.
It would fit.
Yeah, exactly would fit. And you,
Yeah.
God knows you could talk about it for an hour.
Yeah.
You know, if you went
Okay, you're
stanza.
talking about the poem is releasing April 27th, and her book of poems is releasing September 21st. So that's a ways out, but we still could to talk about the poem. You know what? We've got a month to figure it out. So that's cool.
And if we wanted to do it, the text, there was stuff around that was, you know, that was listing the text. I don't know if somebody had it transcribed or what, but
Yeah, the
Oh
full
yeah,
text
I've got
is
it.
in-
I've got it on
in
my
the book.
phone. I took pictures of it, you know, so
Yeah.
I have it on my phone. So
And Cheryl, I need to, before you guys go, and if you can obviously you can start the conversation back up because it's how we roll. Jane Ann, maybe we can both go and get a glass of wine and have even more conversation. But I want, Barb has a little bit of a teaser for next week, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just briefly. And I will, look at that. While you were chatting, I was able to make a new slide. Can you believe it?
Yes.
So if we do what we always do, I love this part of my slide. Bang, look what all you all have accomplished here. All these great books. Finishing Sarah Waters, The Paying Guest. Thank you, Kristen. And boom, Fanny Flagg. Fanny Flagg is also, many of you may know this, she is quoted, she's one of our quotes in CLM about inside the book on self too.
Self,
So
I can't remember if she's, yeah, I think she's in Self.
it's either in
somewhere.
self or in passion, but I think it might be in passion, honey.
Yeah.
Either way, she's one of our quotes. And so Barb, can I get a drum roll for this slide? Everybody, just do
Yes.
exactly. Mandy, just smash on Edie. Bang, 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 bang. Okay. Now,
so
I'm
here's the teaser for next week to be revealed. What do Kamala Harris, Common, and Katherine Johnson have in common with each other, but not with Amanda Gorman?
Ooh.
And this is going to be, we're going to spotlight some of these individuals and others for Black History Month in the month of February. So
Cool.
maybe we can come up with a fun prize or something for somebody that can figure it out.
You know what we can
for
give
next
them?
week.
Cheryl, go into the bathroom real quick, and you
What?
can or into the dining room.
Oh, you want me to show them?
Show them what we can give them. Two things we can send
Something
out.
from
Barb.
your bathroom?
Well, I know there's this thing is in the bathroom, but we'll see where. She might have gone to the dining room.
And Katherine Johnson, if you don't recognize the name, is the mathematician from Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures, yeah.
As an amazing
yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
neat.
look at
Neat.
Yeah.
show the other side, Cheryl. Show them our little sanctuary masks have finally shown up,
Uh-huh.
and then
Good.
our little these are sanctuary pot things.
Nice.
Why was it in the bathroom?
There's a mask. I think it might be my mother's. It's sitting in the bathroom on the counter.
There's a pile of masks in there. Her mom made a bunch of masks when we first started COVID, so.
There you go. All right. Well, Barb, thanks so much. And everybody, thanks so much for your contributions again. We love this week. You know, it was funny. We never knew this would be the sticking week, but we just love the energy of everyone coming and sharing. And again, it's just lovely.
Well, my observation, Joby, for this night is Cheryl just completely loses total control every time.
Right away, right from the first square. Yeah.
I do that on purpose.
What are you going to do with this crowd, right?
Linda, what's funny is the first time we did this, we had slides and questions and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we threw that out before midway. So now Cheryl she prepares and she expects to not do what she prepares. That works perfectly every time.
Can I offer
Thank
something
you.
up?
Thank you. Thank you.
I just wanted to offer up that I read years and years ago, I had no idea how prescient it would be. Anybody who's interested in these unconventional relationships, like the husband and wife break up and the husband moves in next door with his boyfriend and they co-parent and all that kind of thing. There's this book by Daphne Rose. Oh, it's backwards. That doesn't help you.
No, it's
right. That's right.
It's Edie, it was
called,
fine. Edie,
oh,
it was fine.
The Future of
It's
Love.
called The Future of Love by Daphne Rose Kingma, and it's old enough that you can get a copy for like $4. Because it was written in the last millennium, but it was still pretty interesting to read about, you know, and we spent a fair amount of time tonight talking about these non-traditional relationships. So her point is that the future of relationships is moving us toward the vaulting awareness of who we are as human beings, and something you avoid when you conform to cultural norms. So if that interests you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Edie. Well, I'm going to wish that sometime tonight, if you have it in you, that you head outside. I don't know where, if it's cold as it is here for anybody else, but up in the winter sky is a beautiful moon tonight. So hopefully if you've got clear skies,
Okay.
big moon in the winter on snow, can't beat it, you know?
It's snowing like blazes here still.
Yeah,
Barb and I will venture into that 70-degree, frigid 70-degree weather to, it might be down to by now.
Well, I have spent the last 5 years in Arizona and 4 years before that in Florida. And tomorrow I'm going to go out on my snowshoes for the first time in 12 years.
Good for you.
Enjoy.
I don't know why I still have them, but I'm glad now tonight. I'm glad I have.
I'm glad you have them too. It's beautiful out there. All right.
-5 feels like -14 and it's snowing.
Oh my God.
Tomorrow I get my vaccination.
Good job, Cynthia.
Oh,
So
good.
excited.
Was that
That
your
is
first
exciting.
one?
I've worked on this for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine, it's so hard in Michigan because you have to go through your county. And my county's got a little cinder block building they're trying to do this out of. And it's just terrible. But a friend of mine, I teased her today, I said, you're the most undereducated person in my group. And look at you were able to accomplish this. She contacted a building of 55 and over. It's not a facility for, you know, for people ill. It's a regular housing, very pretty building. Well, they're doing their building tomorrow and they opened it for a few others and I'm going to be there. So
Wow.
Good deal.
it's been very hard to get that vaccine.
It
know,
is here too in Texas.
And here in
And
Florida.
Florida.
Yep, here too.
And Cheryl, you had it up in northern Michigan. It was the most efficient, orderly, and they gave you free cookies or something afterwards.
Yeah, and when I went, it's in Wexford County here, you know, where Cadillac is. And it was where they're doing it for anybody who is 82 and over. Or if you're over 65 and you live with someone who is.
Oh, that's great.
So because I just turned 65, I was able to go with Joe's mom and the two of us got a vaccine. But the way we did it, you made an appointment and you were only allowed to show up when your time was close by. So you went right in up and it was a drive-through. They drove up,
Oh, great.
name and everything else. They leaned over into the car and gave you your shot. They went back in and said, would you like some banana bread? Gave you a big old hunk of nice, fresh banana bread. And then you drove your car up to another location and they said, okay, you got to sit here for 15 minutes and then we'll let you go. We want to make sure there's no adverse responses. And that was it. And then they also scheduled us for our second one.
Good.
Wow.
Exactly.
You didn't even get out of your car. That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, we didn't get out. Everybody was masked. You know, we were masked the whole bit.
Every morning for 3 weeks, I would talk to the